Hi, Internet. Welcome to the Troyan YouTube channel. It is Thin Lizzy Thursday, and this Thin Lizzy Thursday is brought to you by my plant in the background that every now and then I still get comments of people saying, "What is up with your hair?" I should move that at some point. I don't really have a place for it. But anyway, it is Thin Lizzy Thursday, and man, oh man, the response last week sure was interesting. So, first off, that came out, the Sweetheart episode came out on John Sykes' birthday, which I did not say happy birthday to John Sykes in the video. For my side gig, running social media for a radio show. I did a post for John Sykes' birthday, but that was pre-scheduled, so I totally forgot about it on Thin Lizzy Thursday proper. So, shame on me for not wishing John Sykes a happy birthday last week, at least on Thin Lizzy Thursday. So, since we finally got through, we got a Chinatown song. I'm hoping for a John Sykes recording. Please Don't Leave Me would be amazing, but also really also hoping it's not a Blue Murder song because I wasn't as into that. Um, well, okay, was into it. Mixed feelings on Blue Murder. But anyway, on to the discussion of last week's song, Sweetheart. Got some interesting responses in the different Facebook groups I posted in, and also on the video itself in the comments, particularly Dream Sketchers, just savage, brutal takedown of Thin Lizzy, just chaos and destruction and carnage. But the thing is, good, valid criticism. I am a guy who doesn't mind you criticizing things that I like or care about, as long as I think you're bringing something good to the discussion and something that I feel is like a good faith criticism. And so, like, when we did that, I did that video about Jordan Peterson criticizing Frozen. I just thought the arguments were dumb. There's legitimate reasons to criticize the movie and to argue against it, but the arguments he made were just dumb. They were bad arguments, and so I'm okay with good arguments against things that I like because I recognize there's flaws in basically every work of art. There is something that you can pick apart and say, "Oh, I don't like that," or "That doesn't quite work." Like "Hold Me Tight" by the Beatles. Paul's vocal is slightly off key, but I still think the song is great, and I still think there's a lot of charm and charisma to that performance. So you can make a legitimate criticism, but there's still things to praise also. Pardon me. Mute during my coughing, and got water in my not very seasonal snowman cup today. So cheers and bottoms up, people. Should probably move that closer. But her critique, I thought, was valid, saying that the music last week she felt didn't gel. And even I, when I was commenting on the piece, I said how the vocals weren't quite in time with the music, didn't seem to fit, at least initially. And then I think, I gradually warmed up to it. And that happens pretty much every time I listen to the song. Um, and I think there is something to be said about the appeal of Thin Lizzy is like, Dream Sketcher has commented on multiple videos that she's just not into Phil's voice. If you don't like Phil, like, that is Thin Lizzy, like, for better or for worse. And I have friends who are more into, like, traditional hard rock, and they say that Phil is their barrier to not liking Thin Lizzy. Where, Mike Walsh, when he did his guest reaction, he has commented me privately, said he'd probably like Thin Lizzy better if Phil wasn't in the band, which to me is madness because he is like, to me, that's the heart and soul of the band. It's like, man, I like, the E Street Band better if Bruce wasn't the singer. But then again, you have Bad Out of Hell as the example. So, also, I have no idea what we're even reacting to this week. So this might be a weird preamble for something that doesn't fit at all. But in general, to me, the appeal of I love hard rock music. I think it's really, really great. I'm just super into hard rock, specifically like 70s, 80s. That's my jam. Uh, I love pop hooks. I love pop craft, and I do love the lyricism of singer songwriters who tell stories. I think that there are some singer songwriters whose heads get so far up their own asses that they're trying to be deep, but they aren't really being deep. And I find a lot of that with like 90s music. I find it's like trying way too hard to be deep, and it doesn't feel very sincere. It's like trying to impress you, than rather just writing what comes from the heart. Versus to me, Thin Lizzy and Phil's writing feels like it comes from the heart. It always feels sincere. It never feels fake or phony. And so that sincerity comes across in the music, comes across in the performance. And so with Phil as a frontman, you do have kind of like a singer songwriter mentality in terms of maybe even vocal approach. But then you have this hard rock band, and that's like maybe like peanut butter and pickles. A weird combination. Doesn't necessarily Hawaiian pizza. Great example. A lot of people just can't get behind Hawaiian pizza. I think it's delicious. It's a combination that doesn't work for everybody, but for me, the combination is great. And but I also think that it's really great that we have someone like Dreamsketcher in the comments. And I know I'm calling you out a lot, but I think it's great because to get the perspective, so like someone who's a non-fan, like saying like, "Oh yeah, I don't like this, and here's why." I think that's actually really valuable to this discussion. So you have the diehards like me who just love most of the catalog, but then you have someone who's just like, it doesn't do it for me. But then kind of like the stuff that I wasn't as into. So I think the diversity of perspectives is great, but the reason why I value that criticism is because it's coming from an intelligent place, a well thought out place, and I find the criticisms to be valid. Um, there's good faith criticism, there's bad faith criticism, and I think it's good faith, and I think that's the kind of stuff that's really exciting. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on the value of criticism and the importance of making good arguments. So what are we listening to today? No freaking idea. I'm going to fire up the random song generator. Like I said, be nice to get a John Sykes song to make up for last week of not wishing him happy birthday. Might be nice to do that War of the Worlds track. I don't know. Let's see what we get. All right, so the Thin Lizzy gods have smiled upon me of sorts in that I don't even need to change the album cover. We're doing another Chinatown track. So basically, Dream Sketcher is probably going to hate this one also. Um, but I mean, and for me, this is actually one of the weaker songs on the album where I still like it, but I would rank it more towards the bottom of the album. So yeah, we're doing "Hey You" off Chinatown. Oh man, yeah, wow. I spent months saying I would like something off Chinatown on this channel, being like, man, I hope we get a Chinatown song this week. That'd be cool. And I kept requesting it, and then it didn't happen. And now we've got it. Now we're here. Come so far, now we're here, baby. So this one lyrically is I'm trying to remember the exact theming of it, without looking at the lyrics. But basically, this one lyrically is about there's a character in the song. This is going from memory, where the character lives in the country, but dreams of the city, and then there's a character who lives in the city but dreams of the country, and so it's about the desire and longing for what one doesn't have. So lyrically, there's actually some cool stuff in this. This is the album closer. I do think it's a cool song. It's a longer one, 5 minutes 10 seconds, and we are 8 minutes, almost 9 minutes into the reaction. I haven't even gotten to the song yet, so sorry about that. But yeah, you know what? Let's just get into it finally, and discuss the song and see how we feel about it. So this is "Hey You" by Thin Lizzy off of Chinatown. Ooh, and we might be getting an ad. Are we getting an ad? We're gonna find out. Oh, yep. All right, so we're probably about to get into the vocal right there. Been a while since I've listened to this one in particular. Um, so the beginning kind of almost has like a Dire Straits police kind of vibe at the beginning, which is very cool. And then once the full band kicks in, it starts to have that more recognizable hard rock sound. You wouldn't maybe necessarily notice this as Thin Lizzy upon the first listen of the track. Like if you had never heard it before, you might not immediately guess Thin Lizzy because of the guitar tone and such. Um, but it is very interesting how you have like kind of like this new wavy kind of intro, and then it kicks in and gets a little bit more hard rock. And then it also made me think about Phil as a bassist. His skill level as a player isn't like super great in terms of like virtuosity. He's about as good of a bassist as I am, which isn't saying much. Like he's competent, he gets the job done. He's very tasteful, and so the parts he plays are tasteful, but they're not necessarily. He's not a Geddy Lee. He's not a Glenn Hughes as a bassist. Pardon me for the cough there. Um, but I definitely. So it's interesting when I look at Phil. I look at him as a kindred spirit in terms of like the ability he has as a musician, where he's just a thoughtful, well-read guy who wrote some great lyrics. But yeah, as a on a technical level, he's okay, but with a lot of charisma and a great songwriter. So that's how I feel about Phil. Vocally, bass wise, like kind of average in terms of skill, but it's what he did with that made him so endearing to me. It's like, you have guys like Paul Stanley who are just like, or was, amazing singers, your Freddie Mercury's like your gods. But then Phil, really, he felt like a mortal who just like climbed up to Mount Olympus and was just hanging out with them just through like cleverness and like the charisma and swagger. So to me, that's very cool. But yeah, let's rewind just a hair and get to the lyrics.
You're living in a small town. The people there are cold. Just living in a small town. Just do it as you're told. You move up to the jungle. You find that it's a hell. When you slip, you fall, you stumble. They lock you in a cell.
Yeah, and I'll rewind as we get back. We're getting to the chorus, but actually, really phenomenal vocal delivery. Just the way that like he'll have a slight bit of grit on some words, the way he'll use additional breath support to get more emotion on other phrases. Like you feel like emotion drip from every word that he says, and that's it's really great because speaking from experience, it can be hard. It's hard enough just hitting the notes when you're in the studio, but getting emotion to come across when you're singing is can be very tricky, and finding the exact right way to say a phrase. In many ways, it's like acting. There can be two ways you can say the exact same line, but it'll give you a completely different meaning. You can say you're living in a small town, or you're living in a small town. Like just the inflection made such a huge difference, and I think he hits the right emotional beats for everything. So looking at these lyrics, you're living in a small town, the people there are cold, just living in a small town, just doing as you're told. You move up to the jungle, you find that it's a hell. When you slip, you fall, you stumble, they lock you in a cell. And so it's about like, you have this character who, grew up in a small town and just didn't like the people that they were surrounded by, which is something that a lot of people can relate to, especially if you're more thoughtful. Typically, when you look at communities, smaller towns, like more agrarian rural areas, they tend to be typically less well read, less open minded, more conservative. Um, that's just a fact. And then cities tend to be more diverse, more open minded, more liberal. And so that's just because you're getting with a small town, it's usually an insular community, and so you just don't get too many outsiders coming in, and so there's just a certain culture that develops versus more urban areas. You tend to get a bunch of people coming into the city for economic reasons, pursuing dreams, what have you. You're going to get more ethnic diversity in New York City than you are in, Aurora, Ohio. That's just how it is. And so, if you're someone with different ideas about life in a small town, you can be ostracized very quickly. Versus if you're in a city, you're just like, if you have a different idea about life, like, yeah, you and every other person in the city, because there's just such a diversity of ideas. And, there's something to be said about the pros and cons of each. If you know me, I moved from a small town, a small farm town outside of Cleveland, Ohio. I lived in greater Cleveland my entire life, so it's not really a small town necessarily, but I've always been a bit more on the urban side of things than preferring the agrarian thing. That's just my personal preference. So I relate to the lyrics like, living in a small town and then moving to the city, because I did move to Nashville, which I don't know. There's a lot of comparison, but I understand the narrative and I relate to the character. So yeah, let's rewind just a hair so we can get to that chorus.
They lock you in a cell. Hey you, you got it made, you got it made. Hey you got it made. Hey you, all your friends told you in your small town. Hey you got it made.
Yeah, oh man, these are what a freaking phenomenal song. Especially when you're considering the audience of this. Um, so the chorus is "Hey you, you've got it made. Hey you, you've got it made," which I think the hook is great. Hey you, and then it's saying you've got it made, but then Phil vamps and said, "All your friends told you in your small town," and then "Hey you, you've got it made." So the idea is saying that like it's appreciating what you have. Um, because there are benefits to that small town, your circle of friends, your family, your support structure. And so while there are negatives, it's important to like look at the positives. So that's kind of what this is doing, and it's giving you like a complex, nuanced view of that. Because think about how many rock songs are about like I got to get out of the small town, I got to break free, Springsteen and Steinman, and all those songs, but just like just wanting to escape the despair of that small town life where like there's a dead end road and your dreams can only go as far as the small town, like. And so it's interesting that a rock band is like forcing you to like actually question that narrative. Like, is it good to leave the small town? Is that the best thing? Do you have it made in this small town? So it's really very thought provoking stuff, and especially when you think about like, this is Thin Lizzy 1980. Their audience is primarily teenagers, so they're speaking directly to that audience and forcing them to confront these thoughts and consider them, which I think is just really brilliant. And like, it's challenging the listener, but also having like killer pop hooks. So I am down for this, y'all.
Just living in your hometown. Sometimes it's kinda cruel. Living in your hometown, where they treat you like a fool. You move up to the city, you find that it's tough, and it doesn't seem very pretty. Now you're sleeping in the rough. Hey you, you got it. Hey you, you got it. Hey you're headed for the big time. You're headed for a life of crime.
All right, so I'm gonna get to that transition in a sec. So I realized that with Phil Lynott as a vocalist, I'm a guy who's usually always talking about melody, melody, melody all the time. The great melodies of the Beatles, the melodies of Jim Steinman, Styx, Kiss, even being great melodically. I love musical theater, so melody is often very strong with those. But also with musical theater, there's a lot of like talk singing. to like move the narrative forward. So there's like a mixture of like the strong melodies, and then sometimes the characters are doing weird things with their vocals that are it's more like speaking than like singing, and they mix the two together. That's very common. And so you actually get a lot of that from Phil, where there's a lot of like musical theater to his performances where, he's playing the character, he's like really immersing himself in the role. And so you get like melody mixed with some talking and Phil like even has like some like rap elements to his delivery, which I'm usually not as into, but the way it all blends together, for me, it's perfection. And so let's look at these lyrics. Just living in your hometown, sometimes it's kind of cruel. Living in your hometown where they treat you like a fool, which goes back to that idea that like if you're different in your small town, like you can get ostracized very quickly. Like me, like I said, I grew up primarily in the suburbs of Cleveland. Lived in Connecticut for a bit, lived in some other places, but mostly Cleveland suburbs growing up. And in going to high school between 2004 and 2008, and being super into glam rock and like wearing makeup and flashy purple suits and like talking about how awesome Prince is and shit like that. Like, I definitely stood out. Uh, and I think it's I really wonder about like like generational things when it comes to this, because I know a lot of people, there's the stereotypes. Man, we're already like 21 minutes in. Oh wow. There's the stereotypes of like the jocks and the nerds and the stuff. But in high school, I was actually generally pretty popular. I got along with everybody. I got along with the jocks. I got along with the nerds. Like generally everybody liked me, and I was almost a homecoming king. I think I came in like second or third place for homecoming king. I don't remember. But the thing is, like, I found a way to relate to different people. You can't relate to everyone on the same level. So like, I can't talk to like the the jocks about the same things as the musical theater kids necessarily, but I can find common ground with different groups and then try to bridge those gaps. And so it can be like I talk with the jocks and then like, oh, we all happen to really like Lord of the Rings, and then we can bond about that. And then with the musical theater kids, we can talk about Stephen Sondheim and whatever, just like finding that common interest. And so that's something I've generally been good at, is like that's kind of one of my superpowers, I guess, is like mirroring people, finding ways that we're alike rather than dissimilar. So I don't have as much of this experience, but I've seen it with other people. And part of it makes me wonder, like, are you trying too hard to not be friendly? Are you, trying too hard not to find a way to be accepted? But then, like, if you're, let's say that you're, gay and living in a small town that, frowns upon that, you're going to feel really angsty and wanting to leave. And I know, like, back in the day, people were a lot less tolerant. So if you were a rocker in a small town, you would often get, ostracized and treated badly. So, like, you can feel that angst. So I didn't experience it myself personally, but I've heard enough stories about it where I feel it has to be real to some degree. But like I said, I was generally pretty liked and pretty popular because, like, oh, Greg, he's just very friendly. He's a little bit weird, but he's nice. But yeah, so then the next stanza, you move up to the city, you find that it's tough and it doesn't seem very pretty. Now you're sleeping in the rough. I also didn't really have this happen to me either. Well, this reaction is going long as it is. But generally, a lot of people, when they move to a big city for the first time, a lot of people, like when they go to the big city from the small town, they end up getting like smacked really hard and then run back to the small town with their tail between their legs because they weren't able to handle city living. They weren't able to figure out the finances, the difference in culture, the degree of isolation or whatever they might have felt. Like, a lot of people do not make that transition well. We all know the story of like the person who moved out to LA or to Nashville to make it as a musician or actor and then moved back home. Like a lot of people, like that is so common. I know so many people who moved to Nashville and they were here for like a year and then they went back and moved in with their parents because they ran out of money or whatever. And that's super common. I'm grateful that I didn't. Every now and then people from Cleveland ask me like, "When are you moving back?" And I'm like, "Dude, all my stuff's here. I don't feel like moving all my stuff." Um, if I were to move, I wouldn't want to necessarily move to Cleveland. I'd want to try another new place because there's so much to this world to explore. So if I were to move from Nashville, I'd want to move somewhere different than Cleveland, than a place I've already been. I'd want to go somewhere else, and like I said, there's so much to explore in this beautiful world of ours. But still, very common. Someone moves to the city from their small town and they just get smacked hard and can't handle it. Hey, you've got it made. Hey, you've got it made. Hey, you're heading for the big time. Hey, you're headed for a life of crime. Because, once you move to the city, a lot of people fall into drugs, they fall into crime, they fall into a group of the wrong people, and so if you're desperate for cash, you might be headed for that life of crime. And yeah, we got a really cool transition where like the drums were killer and stuff. Man, this is such a long reaction, but turns out there's a lot to say about this song. So yeah, let's rewind and get back to it. Yeah, what a great drum fill. Yeah, let's rewind and let's do it one more time.
Hey, you're headed for a life of crime.
Yeah, man, what a killer instrumental section. The thing is, that section just rocked and was really cool. I don't really need to get much more into it. It got a little bit heavier. Got whatever. I'll describe it. We've been here this long. Yeah, it got all like metal and shit, and that was so cool. And it's just like it got you like your fist pumping and your blood boiling, and it's like competitive with the metal of the time. Not necessarily like the heaviness of the production, but just like the nature of the riffs and the way they were playing. That was some metal shit. That was awesome. And so what's great about this is that you have this thought-provoking lyric piece that goes a layer deeper than like most metal songs would go of the era, because they're just like, your small town sucks, screw it, and like that's going to be as far as they'll go. But this is like giving you both sides of that coin, and also giving you both sides of the coin where it's like, hey, look at how thoughtful this is, but also we still rock. It's like, ah, man, I dig it. And looks like it's transitioning into a more mellow section, so great dynamics on this piece.
Living in this jungle, it's like living in a hell. When you slip, you fall, you stumble. They lock you in a cell.
I'm actually going to rewind a bit just because I want to dive into the lyrics, but I want to comment on the music. I love the choice to do the piano. I've often said there's a lot of like Darren Warden stuff that I felt didn't fit in with Thin Lizzy, his keyboard parts. But as I'm really dissecting it, most of his stuff actually fits in really well and is a great compliment. It's just like some of his leads, just like the lead keyboard tone, just sounds a little bit weird and dated. But for the most part, yeah, it's very tasteful, good stuff that's fitting in well with what the band is doing and taking them to a new level. So shout out to you, Darren Warden. I'm finding myself to be wrong and judging you too harshly.
Living in this jungle, it's like living in a hell. When you slip, you fall, you stumble. They lock you in a cell. You move out to the country for something you have done. You're living in the country. Why don't you go back to where you come from? Hey you, I got it, baby. Hey
All right, so a lot to go through there. So, also, first off, that held out note, very impressive. Phil isn't necessarily known for his vocal acrobatics, but that was great. That was a great, nice held out note, and then followed up by a line that was much more brief, but I felt had more emotional punch. So, bravo, great performance. Living in this jungle, it's like living in a hell. When you slip, you fall, you stumble, they lock you in a cell. Um, just talk about just like the brutality of city living, and actually, homelessness. In some places, vagrancy is a crime. So, like, oh, you're homeless. I guess you're in jail now. You move out to the country for something you have done. You're living in the country. Why don't you go back to where you come from? So, like, there are people who like move to the country to escape their life, the city, to like get a fresh new start. But there's irony in that, like maybe instead of moving to this new place, um, like you were from the small town, then you went to the city, and now you're in the country to escape the city. Maybe you're just spending all this time running away from home, and maybe home is where you were supposed to be the entire time. It's like I said, it's really thought provoking stuff. Like considering, like where is the right place for you? And the thing is, there's not necessarily a clear answer. For some people, it's that small town. For some people, it's the city. For some people, it's the country that's even away from the small town. There's different things for different people, and so and this song doesn't really come down to like an answer on it. It implies that maybe you were wrong to think that leaving the small town was the best choice, but it doesn't necessarily resolve on an answer, and more just it forces you to think. And so I'm super into this one. Loving the energy of the drums here. All right, and let's just go through some of those lyrics on the vamp. Forget all these backslappers. You don't stand a chance. Why don't you go home? Go right back to where you come from. Don't get involved in this masquerade. The big city is going to eat you up. All the backslapping. Hey, you've got it made. So as I was saying, the song doesn't necessarily come down to a conclusion. It actually does, at least for this character. Maybe at least this character isn't ready for the big city, isn't able to handle it, and things like that's a lot of people. Dog, there's a lot of people who can't handle like moving to the city, who can't handle like moving to the you know Nashville's, New York's, LA's of the world. And I think a lot of people like go in with like maybe a bad plan or bad expectations. Um, So I mean, I did it a bit weird where like I made sure that like I had a job before I moved to Nashville. I put in I was working at a restaurant at the time, and they had a location in Nashville. And what I did was I drove down to Nashville. I looked for apartments that were like relatively close to the restaurant. Looked at pricing, found one that was the exact same price as what I was paying in Cleveland. Put in the job transfer, and then started work that same week that I moved, so I never lost any income. And got a roommate and was able to like make it so like the only money it cost me, part of me, was the move. And so but a lot of people, they just like move to a new city and like they don't have a job, they don't know anybody, they're just like it's my dream to make it, and they just go in without like anything. And then they end up having to like go back home after a couple months. So that's very common. So I find that it's like, there's a lot of people like who get like that strong passion, like I need to escape and make it, but they don't come up with a plan. And I think you need both. which is centrist Greg over here, um, who's like, you need both. You need to have that passion, that drive, that fire, that recognition that, like, hey, this isn't working out for you here. But also, like, don't go in half caught and just be like, I'm just going to move to the city without a plan. Like, no, like, having a plan isn't a bad thing. There's balance. And shoot, I've been in Nashville like almost 10 years at this point. So I've known people who have left the city after like 3 months. I've been here almost a decade. Um, Now, it doesn't mean that like everything went according to plan. I am not a huge successful rock musician. I'm not even a huge successful YouTuber. I'm a guy who gets my 100 or so people who watch Thin Lizzy Thursday every week, and then like the 10 of you who comment in the comments. But you're my faves. I love all you people. Brian, Mike, uh, just like all you guys. Oh man, I'm trying to remember like all the usernames, and I'm blanking on them. But like Dream Sketcher, uh, Renegade, like all you dudes. Dylan, I'm forgetting somebody. I'm making somebody feel left out. I'm sorry for that. Jay, all you people, I'm forgetting somebody. But anyway, the point I was trying to make, this is so long. Thank you for watching all of this. Double speed it like I do to get through it faster. Having a plan is good, and I think that a lot of people just aren't cut out for it. I think that's just the nature of the beast. Some people can't handle it. Some people can. And I think this song is actually kind of an important song because a good chunk of Thin Lizzy's audience who maybe thought they could move to the city and make it probably couldn't. And so I don't discourage anyone from following their dreams, but I do discourage people from just being stupid. And so if you're going to move to the big city, you got to make sure that like you can handle it. You've got a plan, and you've also got to adjust for like if that plan doesn't go well, you've got to be ready. You know. So, yeah, this is a very thoughtful piece, very thought provoking, very cool, and I think that it's important because they have Thin Lizzy also has other songs about like following your dreams and going for it. So they're not necessarily like a cynical band, but I think this is an important piece that makes you sit, reflect, and decide like, are you doing what is best for you? Is this really your best course of action? And yeah, I mean, this is deep stuff for a hard rock band of the day, and especially concerned like you look at like something like Tool, which is like this is just like the deep examination of like the Fibonacci sequence and like what is life, bro, and there's that's not to say that stuff like that isn't deep, but there's something that's just like so powerful and true about just like this blue collar working class just like deciding what to do with your life kind of song. Something as simple as like where you're gonna move is is actually just like really deep and profound because this is something that like kind of everyone can relate to, and there's a different answer for everybody. So yeah, bravo. I actually I told my wife, hey, we're gonna leave soon. I'm just gonna record a quick Thin Lizzy Thursday, and then we can go. And then ended up being like 40 minutes. But yeah, this is one like I said, I don't listen to it super often. Like outside of listening to the entire album, but it thoroughly impressed me today, and it impresses me every time I listen to it. So it's like one of the ones that like I kind of unfortunately forget about. Um, but yeah, I'm hella impressed with this. I think it's great. And now comes the part, boys and girls, where we rank it, where we put in Hey You. Oh wow, how am I feeling? So I'm looking at this. Yeah, I do like it better than Still in Love with You. Um, and I'm feeling pretty hot on it right now. I listen to Randolph's Tango way more. Like I just jammed to that, even though it's just like it's just kind of just like this is just kind of fun and like Yeah, Randolph's Tango is just fun, and so even though as deep as this is, the sheer fun of Randolph's Tango causes it to be defeated. So, hey you, yeah, that's where I'm pointed. S rank. Didn't see that coming, but you know what? I'm shooting from the hip. Not coming in with a plan, negating everything that I said about coming in with a plan. Screw it. Hey, you, that's where you are ending up, right below Randolph's Tango. Remember, this is my personal list, not necessarily the list of like how I consider them to be in terms of like quality, but just like how much I like them. Um, Actually, some of it is in terms of quality because Speed King, I think, is a well written song, but like I don't necessarily dig the Thin Lizzy version of Speed King that much. So I don't know. It's a ranking. It's wrong. It's a wrong ranking, but it's my wrong ranking. Um, yeah. So it's been a long video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Smash that like button. Smash that subscribe button. Hit that bell icon. Comment. Tell me what you thought of this. Um, yeah, this is guaranteed the most analysis anyone has given this song on the internet. So you're welcome. Happy Thin Lizzy Thursday. I'm going to go eat a sandwich because I haven't eaten anything yet today. Y'all have a good one. Bye, everyone.